Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome back to The Ultimate Era. And also welcome back to The Ultimate Era Presents Spider-Ganza. Thwip, 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 thwip. We are back. We're talking Ultimate Spider-Man. I am excited to get into this because this is one of my favorite Ultimate Spider-Man story arcs, I think. It introduces some great characters. It does a Spider-Man story involving clones in a way that works. the single time that's ever happened in the history of not just Spider-Man, but mankind. And I'm very excited to finally get to it. We've finally gotten here. So let's get right into things. But as always, all of these videos that you see on my channel are brought to you, dear viewers, by my Patreon and my comics. Check them out in the links below. Released in 2006, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Mark Bagley. This is Ultimate Spider-Man Clone Saga. The book actually begins several days after the previous volume. More specifically, it begins several days after Spider-Man fought a couple of vampires and met Morbius. Peter and his girlfriend, Kitty Pryde, have been talking on the phone, and Peter has finally told her about his breakdown that he had at school and how MJ helped to calm him down and comforted him. And Kitty gets upset that he's doing this with his now ex-girlfriend instead of his girlfriend. Peter tells her that they've been friends since second grade, and that's all that there is to it. Peter asks if she's mad that he didn't call her because he did, and no one answered. And Kitty starts to cry and tells him that she is his girlfriend and that she is the person that he should be coming to and telling about these things to find help and security and comfort. And Peter just sits silently and then tells her that she is. Kitty comes back that she clearly isn't because MJ is who he went to. And Peter reminds her that he's not the only person in the world that she talks to. She has all the X-Men. He has no friends. No one who knows about his life other than Kitty and MJ, and like half of his supervillains, but I don't think they're in the mood for a chat. Kitty tells him it's different, because Peter is still in love with her. And Peter stops talking, and Kitty tells him that he didn't break up with MJ because he hates her, didn't want to be with her. He broke up with her because he thought he had to keep her from getting hurt. And then Aunt May gets home and Peter tells Kitty that he has to go and hangs up. And Kitty sits in her bed at the mansion, angry that Peter didn't say something like, "No, I'm not in love with her, I like you," because for her, that's all it would have taken. Then she crashes her head into the pillow and begins to cry. The next day, MJ finds Peter at the end of school and asks how he's doing. Peter tells her that he hasn't come across any more vampires, so that's pretty good. She asks what he's doing later today, and he tells her the same thing he does every day: swing around. She tells him he needs a break from all the web swinging and wall crawling, and invites him to his favorite place, the shopping mall. The two sit in the food court, and Peter thanks her and tells her that he appreciates that she's trying to be friends again, and MJ reminds him that she also made him his new suit that he never thanked her for. And as Peter and Mary laugh, Mark Raxton rocks past, and he says hi to MJ and asks if this is the famous Peter Parker. Mary tells him it is, and Mark smiles, remembering the conversation that he had with MJ several months prior, and says, "Good for her," and then heads off. Peter asks what that was all about, and MJ reveals that she and Mark went out on a date once. Kind of a date, I guess. And Peter tells her to, well, forget it. Then they eat in silence for a little bit until MJ blurts out that nothing happened, and she wound up talking about Peter all night because it was still early on after they broke up, and she kind of drove Mark away. Peter asks if she's gone out with anyone else since they've broken up, and MJ comes back that she and Johnny Storm actually got engaged over the summer. But then she actually just says that everyone is so sure that she and Peter are gonna wind up back together. And then she makes a reference to the Scarlet Letter and says that she may as well be wearing the letter P sewn into all of her outfits. Peter compliments the reference and apologizes for standing in her way of moving on. MJ tells him that that's not what's happening, and he jokes that he is just guilt-ridden by nature. MJ asks how Kitty is, and Peter asks not to go there because she and the X-Men are grounded ever since the whole Krakoa footage leak. Peter kind of lets it slip that to him it feels like Kitty doesn't really know him. She more knows Spider-Man. You know, probably because Peter won't let her come around when he's Peter Parker. So he's to blame for this as well, but it doesn't really matter where that conversation's going, because a fucking mall kiosk is launched through the food court and pandemonium sets. MJ listens to Peter and gets the fuck out of there as he moves to suit up. Spider-Man then rescues a child in the nick of time as the public scream that Spider-Man's trashing the mall and kidnapping kids. He hands the child over and heads back to find the Scorpion. The Scorpion manically tells Spidey that he's not gonna fall for it. He knows all of Spider-Man's tricks. And Spidey tries to calm the stranger down when the police arrive, and the Scorpion whips around and fires his Scorpion venom toxins. Do Scorpions have venom? Do Scorpions have venom? Yes. Yeah, I thought so. I don't know why I would ever second guess my Scorpion knowledge. Anyway, the Scorpion fires his venom at the officers, striking several of them and horribly burning their bodies with its venomous properties. Then Scorpion strikes Spidey through the mall as more police arrive and open fire. Scorpion fires his tail beam at them until Spidey webs him into a column and tries to wrangle the insectoid, but is kicked off. Several cops tackle Spider-Man as Scorpion keeps killing him with his venom. Then they open fire and Spidey webs their guns, leaving him open to a punch that launches him into a Spencer's Gifts. Scorpion runs after him, talking to himself more than he is to Spider-Man, and the two brawl it out until Spidey finally gets the upper hand and smashes open the Scorpion's helmet, revealing his own face. And later that afternoon, MJ arrives at home and tells her mom about the big attack at the mall and how Spider-Man came in and saved everybody. MJ's mom hugs her and complains about how crazy the world has become. And MJ tells her that she's alright and that she just came straight home. Then she heads upstairs, retrieves her diary, unaware of a figure that is hidden inside of her closet. And the person slowly exits, and MJ realizes at the last second that someone else is in the room. And then she is grabbed. And a little bit later, her mom heads up to her room to tell her that she got something in the mail from Bernard College, but she finds her daughter's bedroom totally empty and the window left open. Flashback time. It's not a big flashback. I guess it's not really a flashback now that I think about it. We're just kind of jumping back in time to slightly earlier in the day. Geez, I made this way more confusing than it ever needed to be. Outside of Queens and inside the Baxter Building, Johnny and Ben watch a movie as Reed tests something out on Johnny. He's turned his urine into drinkable clean water. Johnny freaks out that he just drank piss as Reed explains that he finally watched Waterworld and wanted to try it out for himself. Ben is more surprised that Reed has actually seen a movie, and Reed doesn't really understand why everyone's freaking out because it's literally water right now, and Sue reminds him that there are some things that are still socially unacceptable. Then the security system alerts of a breach, and they find Spider-Man clinging to the window. Reed tries to deactivate the defense measures, but it's too late and Spidey is zapped. The FF managed to get the two inside, and Spider-Man wakes up not long after and explains the whole Scorpion situation, and that he needs Reed to tell him who the Scorpion is. Reed prepares to run a blood test, and Spidey asks if he can do it so that Nick Fury doesn't know what they're up to, and Reed smirks and tells him he can definitely do that. And sometime later, Reed gets the results as Scorpion is put into a suspended animation device back-to-tank thing, and the DNA test turns out he's 94% Peter Parker. Peter freaks out as Sue notes that the tail has been illegally biografted into his spinal cord. And Peter panics and rips off his mask and explains that he is Peter Parker. Johnny recognizes him from his brief stint at Midtown High earlier that year and is shocked. And not long after in the Triskelion, Reed Richards contacts General Nick Fury, and Fury answers and immediately tells Reed that he has not changed his mind about either the Skrull Initiative or the multiversal probes. Reed tells him that he's calling about something else: the government's stance on human cloning. Fury quickly reminds him that it is off limits and too morally ambiguous for the suits in Washington. Reed asks if Fury is aware of anyone doing it recently, and Fury says he does not know of anyone, and reminds Reed that he better not be doing it either. Reed assures him that he's not cloning anything. He's just making weird little long-headed babies of the Ultimates in a virtual petri dish. Reed comes up with some excuse that he was reading an article and it got him thinking, and Fury thanks him for wasting what few precious minutes of his day he has to himself and hangs up. Spidey says Fury has gotta be lying, and Reed assures him that Fury is actually telling the truth because Reed has installed some sort of virtual sensors that read body temperature and pulse rates, and Fury's didn't budge, meaning that he has nothing to do with this. And then Reed looks over the Scorpion again, noting how brilliant it really is. Reed asks for a blood sample of Peter's and asks how he got his powers, and Peter explains the spider, and Reed thinks he's joking and takes a sample out of Peter's blood and notes that it has the same oddities as the Scorpion's. Then Peter realizes that it's getting late and he needs to get home before Aunt May or else she'll kick him out. So he launches himself out of the window and swings away. So Peter swings through the city as the sun sets and reflects beautifully against the towering glass skyscrapers and over the Queensboro Bridge and into Queens itself, and finally Forest Hills as he freaks out over every single aspect of every single thing that has happened today. He comes up with an excuse for Aunt May as he runs up the sidewalk to the house and gets to the door, and May swings it open and asks if MJ is with him. He tells her he was in the city getting his paycheck, and May tells him that MJ is missing. And she went missing sometime after school, when she got home. She rings Anna Watson to let her know that she's not with Peter, and Peter quickly asks if he can help look for her, and May lets him, and he runs off. He races to the nearby warehouse that he and MJ used as a hideout and calls out to her. MJ?
Whoa, sorry, Tiger. This is awkward.
Who are you?
Who do I look like?
I don't care. Where's MJ?
I'm not her, if that's what you're thinking.
Where is she?
I don't know. I don't get to be a part of that part.
I want to know what's going on. Where is she? There is nothing I won't do to protect her.
Yeah, great job so far.
Peter lunges at the mysterious Spider-Girl as she easily dodges all of his attacks. Also, she's able to organically shoot webbing from her fingers, and she webs Peter's face and launches him into a crumbling pillar, which collapses a loft of the warehouse down on top of him. She walks over, checks his pulse, and breathes a sigh of relief that he's okay. She tells a wounded Peter that she should not have come here, but she just had to know. And then she promises to get MJ back for him and to help the others. And she swings away into the night. Peter wakes up not long after and leaps to the roof, hoping to spot the mysterious Spider-Girl, but finds nothing. And then he wonders if MJ snuck into his old house, and he races there, and he spots a young woman entering through the front door. And he leaps down to the street and cautiously enters, where he finds a very confused Gwen Stacy asking when they moved. And elsewhere, Mary Jane Watson wakes up inside of a giant glass container. She calls out for anybody to come help her, wondering where she is and who took her here. And then a figure makes himself known from the shadows. He tells her to calm down, and she demands to know why Peter put her into this container thing. And Peter tells her that he now knows how to protect her, and that he should have thought of this years ago. Peter assures her that everything's gonna be okay, because he's smarter than he's ever been letting on, and he realized, once he started thinking smarter, that Mary Jane can't possibly survive all of this unless she has superpowers. And then he steps out into the light, and MJ screams in fear as the figure before her emerges, and it echoes through the abandoned OzCorp facility. And back in Queens, Peter demands to know who the blonde girl is standing before him. Gwen grows more confused and begins crying, unable to control herself, and Peter screams that she died in their backyard, and he saw it. Gwen asks him again what is happening, and what Peter is talking about, and Peter falls to the ground believing he's just gone insane, and that this is all a hallucination. But Gwen kneels down and touches him, and Peter realizes that she is as real as the spider has 8 legs. That's a saying. That's a real saying. Don't look it up. Elsewhere, the moon climbs high beyond the Baxter building as Reed and Sue wake up Mr. Parker the Scorpion, and they introduce themselves, assure that he is safe and that they want to help him. And then Reed and Sue also discuss just how horrifying this experiment was, the things that were done to this person, this clone. Because, as I mentioned earlier, the tail is biografted into his spine, which means that removing any aspect of it or the suit would kill him. And they reluctantly agree to contact Nick Fury, because there's clearly something bigger going on here. And back in Queens, Peter listens to Gwen as she explains that she can't remember much, but what she does remember is hazy and dreamlike. She remembers waking up in a hospital, and there were dead bodies. And Peter asks how she got here. And a flash of the city from above appears in her mind, but she can't remember, and asks if she really did die. Peter confirms, and Gwen tells him that she just doesn't know what to say. Then they hug, and Peter checks her weird little medical bracelet when a light flashes into the home, and Aunt May opens the door and finds them. May screams, stumbling out of their old home and running off into the street. Peter mutters that this is it. This is the moment he's been dreading, and Gwen asks what he means as he takes her hand and they head after May. Not long after, May heads into her house and grabs the phone right before Peter and Gwen arrive. Put the phone down. Just please put the phone down. And sit down, please. There's no easy way to say this. I'm Spider-Man. And I have been. I put on the costume and I try to help people. It's me. And Gwen was killed by a monster looking for me. And now she's back somehow. And I just found out she's not dead. And I'm terrified that MJ is out there and in trouble because of me, and we're trying to figure out what's going on.
Say the first part again.
I'm Spider-Man.
Prove it.
I'd rather not.
Prove it! This whole time.
Ever since I got bit by that spider.
And Norman Osborn, all that trouble with him? That's why?
Yes.
And this? Is this really Gwen Stacy? Even after I saw her dead body with my own eyes?
I don't know what this is. I mean, there's clearly something...
Stop. Get out.
But...
Take whatever this is and get out of my house. You are not my son. I gave up an entire life to take care of you, and you've done nothing but lie to me. Take your ghost and your lies and get out.
Hey, May. When did you get so feisty? Take it easy on him. He's only a kid. And he's trying to make the best of an impossible situation. Dad? That's right, if this nightmare of a night could not get any worse or weirder, Richard Parker, Peter's dad, who he thought has been dead for, like, over 10 years, is back. Richard heads into the kitchen and tells Peter that there is a lot they need to talk about and apologizes for showing up out of the blue. May watches in hate-filled silence as her eyes begin watering. Richard grabs Peter and hugs him, and May explodes. She screams that she's had enough Parker drama in her life. Her sister married Richard, not her, and she wants them all out. Peter asks if May knew about this, that his dad was alive, and she says that she did. He actually came to her several months ago after work, but she demanded that Richard stay away from Peter. Richard asks how Gwen's feeling, and assures her that no one's gonna hurt her, he just wants to check her pulse, and asks if she's hungry. Then he helps himself to the fridge and finds some soda and leftover pizza, and invites everyone to sit down and have a bite, and let's all talk this over. Back at the Baxter building, Nick Fury has arrived, and Reed finishes explaining the situation. Then Fury calls in an order to get the Spider Slayers ready and sent to Queens. Meanwhile, Mary Jane Watson is strapped into a large device with various IVs stuck in her, and Kane tells her that even though the lab is in disrepair and he had to improvise, he's sure he'll be able to make her better. Then he's kicked in the face by Tarantula. He demands that Kane get away from Mary Jane and stop this wicked experiment, and the two fight through the lab as Tarantula uses his 6 arms to kick Kane's ass until Kane slams his decayed fist into Tarantula's head, rendering him unconscious. Then he smiles back to MJ and tells her everything's gonna be okay. And at the Parker residence, Peter, Gwen, Richard sit down and eat some pizza as May silently watches. Richard then goes on to explain that after he and Eddie Brock Sr. were financially ruined by Trask Industries, they were actually given a final offer to sign over everything and get a big payout. But at the airport, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He could not keep working for Trask. He and Mary got into a huge fight, and everyone else except for him boarded the plane. Then the plane crash happened. killing everyone, including himself, because he was logged as on board, thereby making him legally dead. And he didn't know what to do with himself or how to bring himself back into everyone's life. And he was lost until a man named Henry Gyrich from the CIA contacted him and offered him a nice position. Peter asks how he's tied to Gwen in all of this, and Richard tells him that the position he was offered in the CIA was to continue the genetic work that Richard had been doing, underground and in secret, of course, to ensure that the US government didn't have to rely on people like Nick Fury, or S.H.I.E.L.D., or his proposed Ultimates at the time, to, handle everything. They could make their own super soldiers. And after years and years of work, amateur footage was eventually confiscated by the CIA of the symbiote's attack in Queens. But the footage also caught his son Peter on camera. And after that, Richard was allowed to watch Peter from afar, and he eventually did make contact with May, but he was unable to contact Peter lest he reveal their operation to both Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. And as Richard is finally about to reveal how Gwen is alive, floodlights ignite the building, and Nick Fury calls out that S.H.I.E.L.D. has the home surrounded and orders everyone to slowly step outside in a calm manner, because the neighborhood's been evacuated and he's not afraid to take action. As Richard tells Peter to put on the suit, because Fury isn't here to talk, he's here to fight. Then Gwen wrenches in pain, and she transforms into Carnage. Carnage crashes out of the window as Aunt May stumbles from a heart attack and falls before Peter catches her. Carnage begins ripping and attacking into the Spider Slayers and S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers as Fury alerts everyone that they are under attack. And at the Triskelion, the Tinkerer engages the Slayers. Fury orders him to just open fire. Energy beams begin riddling the Parker home as Peter clutches May in his arms. Richard tries to get him to leave, telling his son that he'll take care of her, but he needs to stop Fury and the army he's brought. And Peter explodes out of the house and attacks Fury, telling him that his aunt is inside and she's going to die. And Fury places him under arrest as the Carnage symbiote continues tearing through Slayer units. But Peter grabs Fury by the neck and he's shot by a Slayer and falls to the ground. And Fury prepares to trank him when his handgun explodes and the Fantastic Four arrive, demanding to know what the fuck is going on. Fury tells him to get their little asses back to the Baxter building because this is a domestic military operation. Then Ben is attacked by Carnage and he gets launched several blocks away into a Burger King. Reed shouts that Fury can't just take over a neighborhood and ruin a kid's life because he found out someone made a clone of him. And Fury demands that they stand down or else he'll take them in too. Peter cries that his aunt is having a heart attack and she's still in the house with his dad. And Reed is shocked because he knows that Peter's dad died years ago. Sue and Reed then race inside the home as Reed is attacked by Carnage, and he's fascinated by it. So Sue walks in and finds Richard Parker kneeling over an unconscious May. She runs to him and asks if she is an acute myocardial infraction or if it was just a stroke. And he is unable to answer. She tells him that the FF will take care of this, and then creates an invisible gurney to carry May out and a protective bubble around them, and then lifts the three up into the air into the Fantastic Car, and Johnny asks if Peter needs a lift, but Peter tells him no. And they launch themselves through the spider army towards Fury. Tinkerer alerts the general that he's locked on the symbiote, and Fury orders him to use full power, and a massive blast of energy ruptures through the Queen's neighborhood. Ben finally arrives back, and everyone kind of just stares in shock at a nude Gwen Stacy. Then she falls unconscious as S.H.I.E.L.D. begin to detain her. Johnny, Ben, and Peter watch in shock as Fury marches over and tells Peter that he's either taking him in or he's taking him out. And he draws a gun on Peter Parker. Fury tells him he doesn't get to be Spider-Man anymore. Not after being at the center of the biggest genetic fucking disaster since the Hulk. And Peter cries out, asking what he did. Fury tells him he didn't do anything. It was his clones. And he apologizes to the kid. And back at the OzCorp building, Kane frees MJ and she asks what he did to her. Kane reveals that he filled her with Oz formula, and now she won't get hurt. And MJ freaks out and wrenches over in pain and transforms into a demonic goblin. A demo goblin, if you will. And it kind of looks like this old Don Heck art from this Marvel comic called If a Man Be Mad. doesn't it? Not long after, Peter Parker is detained as Reed tells Fury that this is a major violation of his rights, and Fury reminds him that he's the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., and his job is to protect the world using any and every measure at his disposal. And he doesn't need to fucking explain himself to some 20-something-year-old nerd who has the powers of a deflated balloon. Then Spider-Girl swings in and grabs Peter and leaps away. Johnny flies after them and follows them into the city, but loses sight. And in an alleyway below, Spider-Girl frees Peter and instructs him to follow her. They head to New Jersey and they ride atop a semi-truck, and Spider-Girl removes her mask to reveal that she is yet another clone of Peter Parker. Peter asks if there's more, and she tells him yes, there are, and that they need to find him and help him. And he asks if his father had a hand in making her as well, and she recounts to him how she was born. She remembers waking up to find Dr. Ben Reilly, and he explained how she was brought into the world a week prior and that her body is still forming and maturing. But he tells her not to worry about all those memories that she has of herself as Peter Parker, and assures her that that is not who she is, and that she will be safe. And he exposits that the goal within this phase of work was to create a perfect clone of Peter Parker to obtain his spider powers, but in her case, they took some creative chromosomal liberties. He then explained that they'll have a psych team coming in soon to strip her of his memories and implant her with all new ones. And he tells her that her new life will involve her being a special agent, and tells her how cool that is. Then he opened her file and informs her that her name is Jessica Drew, codename Spider-Woman. About a month later, Jessica Drew Spider-Woman is unveiled in her costume. Dr. Reilly tells her that she will finally become Jessica Drew today, and introduces a psychic named Cassandra Webb, who will implant her with new memories. Then a wall collapses as the Stacy symbiote escapes captivity and goes on a rampage, killing Cassandra Webb and Dr. Reilly amongst many others, before it finally crashes through the ceiling, destroying whatever mechanical workings were in there that kept the other clones locked in their cells. Peter clones and Jessica all meet, and Kane demands that they find MJ because she needs help. Then Richard Parker tells them that they need to get back into their rooms and to wait for the power to come back on. And Jessica tells everyone to leave Peter and the rest of them alone. But the other three race off for an escape, and she apologizes to Peter for ruining his life, even more than it already was. Peter asks if she knows who took MJ, and Jessica tells him that it was probably Kane, but if that's true, then things are very bad. Then she tells him to jump off the truck and leads him over to the OzCorp building, and they trek through the abandoned complex and find the Demo Goblin attacking Kane. Jessica webs Tarantula and pulls him to safety, and then wakes him up, and Tarantula informs them that Kane injected MJ with Oz formula. MJ, the Demo Goblin, roars, and Peter stands before her, and she sees him and shifts back to her normal self. And Peter fucking decks him. Jessica covers up MJ as Peter demands to know how Kane got his hands on Oz formula. Then Dr. Otto Octavius arrives with Nick Fury and the Fantastic Four, and he reveals that he is their father. Slight flashback time. Again, it's just jumping back in time. It's not really a flashback. At the Xavier School, Kitty and the X-Men watch the news about a S.H.I.E.L.D. task force evacuating a neighborhood in Forest Hills, Queens. Kitty tries to call Peter, but when he doesn't pick up, she panics, and the news cuts to an interview with a local resident, Mary Jane Watson's mother, pleading for help finding her lost daughter. And Kitty races through the mansion to find Professor X. She phases through a wall and pleads that they need to go to Queens because Peter is in trouble. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury shut down his neighborhood, and everybody's gonna get really hurt if they don't help. Xavier tries to calm her down, but she shouts that if this was his girlfriend, they would have been in the fucking X-Jet by now. And Cyclops smirks and says that they're going to Queens. Elsewhere, Sue and Richard bring May into the hospital, and as the doctors take her in, Sue glances over at Richard Parker and asks a nurse if she can borrow a microscope, and they excitedly let the Sue Storm use their equipment. So she pricks Richard's finger and draws a blood sample and inspects it, and then uses a computer to get a blood sample match requested from the Baxter building. And back at OzCorp, Fury orders the Parker clones to all stand against the wall. And Reed is shocked that Otto Octavius was behind this and asks how he was able to get so many variations. Jessica, however, is horrified that Otto Octavius is the one who made her, and Otto smiles and tells her she's welcome. Then Fury puts a gun up to her as she tries to attack Otto, and Octavius asks for everyone to stay civil and act like adults. Peter panics because MJ has Oz formula in her system, and Johnny tells Reed that this is really creeping him out and asks if Reed can save Mary Jane. Fury tells him that the Fantastic Four are not a part of this and that they need to fuck off. So Johnny flames his fists and argues with Fury that Mary Jane is a civilian and that Reed needs to help cure her. Peter picks her up and hands her off to Ben, and Reed promises that he will do everything he can. Then Kane launches himself after MJ, but he's gunned down by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And then Jessica punches one, but before she's shot, Fury fires into the air and orders everyone to calm the hell down. He reluctantly agrees to let the Fantastic Four take Mary Jane and orders them to fuck off. And then Ben tells Otto to take his shitty bowl cut and shove it up his ass as they leave.
Fury, I appreciate your good work in what is a very tense situation, but this is our problem, and we'll have transport ready to take all of these subjects back to safekeeping.
Doctor, you ain't taking shit. You got me? You have a lot to answer for.
But I don't have to answer to you.
The minute your little house of horrors dropped on civilian property, you better believe you do. You're under arrest.
Ha! We'll see. Do you wonder why you didn't know this project was happening? I made a deal with the federal government to work for them, to help them design a new breed of super soldier. And it seems that there are a great many people in the United States government that truly hate Nick Fury. They don't want you as the only person in the country with his finger on the superhero button. So, thanks to the good people at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Projects, Research and Development, I get to continue my good work.
I don't think so.
Oh, I have credentials. I have rights. Oh, and I'm not in your jurisdiction.
How did you?
We had a Peter Parker blood sample. Peter Parker. Confiscated from your good friend, Dr. Connor's assistant, Ben Riley. He was a good man. And with it, we went to work.
Don't.
Oh, are you gonna cry? Spider-Man gonna cry? This isn't about you. This is about my work. And it just so happens that my work completely perverts and destroys every single part of you and your life.
And back at the hospital, Sue gets to the Baxter Building system to return the blood match. And it is a 99.342% match for Peter Parker. And Richard happens to see it and walks away. Back at OzCorp, Otto continues his tirade, noting that he has made the most important scientific discovery since Bruce Banner discovered gamma radiation mutation, and that he is the one who made the discovery. Not Reed Richards, not Osborn, not Tony Stark, Otto Octavius. And by this time next year, when 1,000 Thors descend into the Middle East and put an end to that situation, he will receive a Nobel Prize and a Medal of Honor. But he assures Peter that he will thank him in his speech. And Peter realizes that Richard isn't his father. Otto laughs at him for truly deluding himself so far as to really believe that that thing was his dad. And he tells Peter that he thought he was smarter than that. And Peter begins to cry, and then the hate overtakes him. And he stares Otto down. Otto tells him to stare all he wants. He's not the bad guy in all this, because all the guns in the room are pointed at Peter Parker. Peter turns to Fury and offers himself up if Fury sends himself and his men out for some coffee for a few minutes. And Otto laughs again that Fury isn't in charge of anything, because the feds are already on their way, and they will use whatever force necessary. Fury orders his agents and the Spider Slayers out of the building to secure the perimeter. And Otto begins to panic and asks what the fuck he's doing. And Otto begins to panic and asks what the hell he's doing. And Fury notes that he's not in charge of the situation. He can't do anything. Doop-de-doo. And they leave. Then Tarantula attacks Otto and holds him down as Peter lunges at him, and the metal all around them in the lab begins rocking apart and hoisting into the air as Otto uses his ferrokinesis to plunge a rusted pipe through Tarantula's chest, hitting him into a wall, and he begins forming new arms out of the lab itself and gloats that he is more powerful than Peter can possibly imagine. And meanwhile, at the Baxter building, Reed tries to awaken MJ when Dr. Storm arrives. Reed explains the situation as Mary Jane slowly rouses awake, and Johnny asks his dad if they can save her. Then MJ sits up in panic and screams out and begins transforming, and she attacks Ben, sending him through the containment bubble housing the Scorpion. And at the hospital, Sue speaks to Richard on the rooftop, and she asks him to look at his hands, wondering if he thinks that those look like the hands of a 40-year-old man, and she regretfully informs him that he is not Richard Parker. The real Richard died years ago, when Peter was a little kid, and she tells him that he's a clone. That's why he didn't know what to do when May collapsed, and Richard shouts that she's a liar because he remembers his life. Sue tells him that his DNA matches Peter's almost exactly, and Richard crumbles to the floor. Back at OzCorp, Fury comes face-to-face with FBI agent Henry Gyrich. Fury tells him that he and his boys can go on home, but Gyrich demands to know where Octavius is, and Fury plays dumb and says that as far as he's aware, he's still in jail. Meanwhile, Doc Ock unleashes his full fury as the two final spider people are left standing. Peter's launched across the room and Jessica's slammed in the face as she tries to web Ock, and a whirlwind of metal soars around them. As back in the Baxter building, Reed tries to contain MJ Goblin. The Scorpion falls out of his containment unit and wakes up to see the brawl, and the Demo Goblin MJ spots him, sees Peter's face, and begins reverting back to human form and falls unconscious, along with the Scorpion. Peter goes head-to-head with Dr. Otto Octavius once again, as Otto demands that he finally admit defeat. Peter rips out one of his tentacles as Jessica swings and kicks him in the jaw, knocking his glasses off and causing Otto to angrily form a tornado of metal through the massive lab, crumbling and cannibalizing the building itself. He screams for Peter Parker to finally die as he lashes out erratically at Peter and Jessica. The two corral him and maneuver and simultaneously pulverize Otto across the room. And Otto slams into the ground, and everything in the air falls after him. And everything is finally, once again, calm. Jessica finds Kane's dead body. Peter tells her that they need to go. He made a promise to Fury to surrender, and Jessica tells him to forget that. But he tells her that MJ and May are far more important than his own safety. So Jessica leaps away and escapes the building and tells him that she's done arguing with herself and disappears. And a few minutes later, Peter emerges, dragging Otto's body with him as Gyrich argues with Fury. And Peter begins arguing with Agent Gyrich. Then Johnny arrives, swoops him up, and flies away. And coincidentally enough, the clone of Richard Parker has begun rapidly aging for some reason, even though none of the others are. I guess because he was rapidly aged to be older, it's affected him in some way, and he's decaying like all Marvel clones end up doing. And he quietly asks if Sue Storm will be Peter's friend. And even though Peter isn't really his son, he still cares for him. And he tells her that Peter will need friends. He's going to need people to help him, especially after this. And he needs someone there to watch out for him and be there to support him, especially because he's an orphan who has kind of learned to not think to rely on other people and just to keep to himself. And Sue tells him that of course she'll help Peter. And as Richard sits down, looking over the city, he thanks her for everything. Johnny arrives back at the Baxter building where they find Reed and Dr. Storm isolating the Oz compound and preparing to totally remove it. MJ flares up and her body writhes in pain as the operation commences, and finally, minutes later, she comes to, and she sees Peter. And she sits up, and Reed and Storm tell her to just relax for now. But MJ asks if Peter is really him, and everyone assures her that he is. Peter gives her a very brief rundown of what happened, and Johnny whispers that she should probably hug him after all of this. And the two embrace, and she asks why he's apologizing if he had nothing to do with all of this. And he jokes that he's just guilt-ridden by nature. And then he begins crying and tells Mary that he loves her. And she's been right this whole time, and he almost lost her. And he loves her so much. And Peter asks if she'll be okay, and Dr. Storm and Reed assure him that the antidote has done its job. And Reed asks MJ to stay a little longer so they can keep an eye on her, and Peter says that he needs to go find his aunt. But before he leaves, Reed stops him and lets him know that they can cure him too. Johnny says no one's gonna blame him if he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore, especially after tonight. And Peter asks if he can think it over, and thanks the Fantastic Four for everything they've done. Then Johnny flies him to the hospital, and after they leave, Nick Fury arrives at the Baxter building, having contacted the Ultimates to deal with this mess, and tells the group that he's this close to bringing them all up on charges. And Ben asks why Fury's being such a fucking asshole about all this. Fury tells him that Peter was the weapon chosen by the real bad guys. Ben tells him that none of this was the kid's fault. And Fury tells them that the situation needs to be contained. Then MJ interrupts, and she tells him that Peter looks up to Nick Fury like a father, and asks if he even realizes that. And she even reveals a very close secret that Peter told her, which is that when he wants to grow up, he wants to be like Nick Fury. He wants to be on the Ultimates. He wants to be the greatest hero in the world. And she asks that after all of this, after everything that he's been through, Fury's just gonna throw him in jail? And later at the hospital, Peter and Johnny arrive to find Sue in May's quarters. She tells him about his father, and Peter interrupts that he already figured that out. And she also reveals that he didn't make it. Sue gets ready to leave with Johnny, and Peter thanks her. She tells him it's not necessary.
I know I should have told you. I know that now. The reason I didn't do it was because I was scared of all of this. And it happened anyway. And the same thing happened with MJ. And I was so scared of this one thing happening to either of you that I tried so hard to make it not happen, and it still did. And I know why. I was lying to you. I didn't trust you as much as you trusted me, and what hurt the most was when you said I wasn't your son, because to me, I am your son, and I have to be because you're my mom, and you're all I have. What now?
Wait outside. Do you know why I came to your house tonight? Do you know why I had the spider slayers at your house tonight?
No, I don't.
Because the situation was in the open, out of control, and an immediate threat to civilian life. And you were at the center of it.
And you had an army of me slaying robot things just ready to go? What, in case of one day a bunch of clones of me happened to be invented and just went nuts? Oh wow, that's some forward thinking.
No. I made them to take you down.
Why?
Because I'm a study of human moves, kid. And with all that's happened to you, it looked to me like we were witnessing the next big supervillain. And I wanted to be ready.
Me? The next big supervillain?
Kid, the stuff that's happened to you, well, I thought you were well within your rights to snap. And it's my job to be ready. Your parents, your uncle, the Osborns, vampires, mutants, Doc Ock, Kingpin, you flipping out on me. It looked like you were gonna snap.
But I didn't.
No, you didn't. And after all this night, you didn't.
So, you were wrong.
Yes.
Thank you.
In fact, I see the opposite is true. And I'm watching the birth of someone really special.
Are you going to see Reed Richards?
Yeah, actually, I gotta run back there. Why?
Can you tell him no thanks? And that I'll pass on the offer?
Aunt May slowly begins to wake up in a daze as Jean Grey and Kitty sneak through the hospital, psychically blinding themselves to the whole faculty, and Kitty pleads with Professor X to make Peter's aunt forget what happened tonight. Charles refuses, and Kitty screams at him that Peter didn't want her to know. This was all a mistake. But Charles tells her that it's not his place to do so, because life has consequences. And Kitty begins crying and tells Professor X that she hates him and runs off. And Jean wonders if maybe she's right. But Charles assures her that she isn't. And Jean looks in and sees Aunt May gazes up and smiles, and she tells Peter that the costume is pretty garish. And then they hug, and Jean leaves to find Kitty. Back in Queens, Agent Sharon Carter informs the media and the citizens of Forest Hills that the attack was by an unnaturally powered villain. No one in the neighborhood was a target, but thanks to Nick Fury and his SHIELD team, they were able to evacuate the neighborhood before any casualties. Then she clearly states that this was not a mutant act of terrorism, and that SHIELD would like to publicly thank Spider-Man for his invaluable help in the situation. And she tells them that he is the true hero, and that everyone in the neighborhood owes him a debt of thanks for his selfless behavior, as Agent Jimmy Woo returns MJ to her mother. And outside Forest Hills, Queens, Peter finds Jessica at the warehouse. He suggests that she turn herself over to Nick Fury for her own benefit and safety, but Jessica declines. She's done with shadowy government figures of authority, and Peter asks what she's going to do now. And she tells him that she'd like to go to school with him. And he freaks out, and Jessica bursts out laughing that he actually fell for it. And then she wonders if that means that she would have also fallen for it. She tells Peter that she'll go somewhere else, try to start a new life of sorts, or try to help people, something. And Peter jokes that she can use his spider naming free of charge. Jessica asks how May is, and Peter tells her that she'll be fine. She just needs to stay in the hospital and recuperate. And he also notes that Mary Jane was saved by Reed Richards. And Jessica says that once they become adults, she hopes that they end up like Reed Richards. And Peter notes how weird this conversation is quickly becoming. Then she asks if he's ready for the most awkward hug in history, and the two embrace, and then she swings away. And the next day, Nick Fury arrives at the Triskelion to find Scorpion and the Gwen clone held in stasis and orders his doctors to get to work. And meanwhile, Peter overlooks his ruined house, and MJ and her mother find him. He tells Mrs. Watson that his aunt is going to be fine. She's just going to have to stay in the hospital for a while after the heart attack to, recuperate and get physical therapy and all that. And MJ tells him that Norman Osborn kidnapped her, but Spider-Man saved her and she fainted. And Peter tells her that they all got pretty lucky last night. And then MJ asks if she can speak alone to Peter, so her mom just walks a few paces away. And MJ says that her mom said it's okay for him to stay at their place, and he worries how they're going to afford to fix all of this. And she laughs and says that he'll just have to stay with her forever. And they touch heads and lean into one another as she looks into his eyes. Then they kiss. And they head off with MJ's mom back to the Watson residence, unaware that Kitty had arrived and saw the whole thing. And the next morning, MJ wakes up at 6 a.m. in a panic. She heads out into the house and finds Peter asleep. She goes to brush her teeth, and that's when her hand begins trembling. She drops her toothbrush, grabs hold of her wrist, and works on calming herself. Then she sees Kane's mangled face in the mirror and screams and falls against the toilet as Peter grabs her and calms her down. She cries into his shoulder as he comforts her. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you thought in the comments below of your thoughts on Ultimate Clone Saga. It is just fantastic. It's great, it's concise, it's succinct and quick moving. It's a great story with a familiar character actually being the mastermind, and it all makes sense actually within this universe. The list goes on about the positives about this, but I think the most important thing is that It knew how to fucking end the story. I love that Doc Ock is the mastermind and that Bendis ties this in with, when we last saw Ben Reilly. I love Doc Ock as a villain too. He's one of my favorites, especially the ultimate version of the character. He really gets some cool character evolution and just unique storylines in this universe, especially in the future. And as much as I do like Kitty Pryde and Peter being together, they obviously never had the connection that MJ and he have. And so, I am glad that they're back. It's very bittersweet what happens. It's cute. It's loving, I suppose. And this is just such a great peek of Ultimate Peter Parker's life. Things are changing. It's a veritable storm is approaching. And a terrible, terrible way to prepare the closing out of Peter Parker's junior year of high school is this story. Things pretty much don't get better after this. It is a sharp decline for the next coming stories. Peter gets fucked up. The Shocker kidnaps him. Venom comes back. Ultimatum. It's not great, but what is great is Jessica Drew's introduction into the Ultimate Marvel Universe as a clone of Peter. I just think that's a fantastic take, and she is, without a doubt, the coolest aspect of this story arc. Far better than the original Spider clone. Then, of course, we get the sort of revitalization and realization of Fury and his influence on Peter, and I love, one of my favorite things, something that actually made me tear up when I was reading this again and doing the script, is when Spider-Man is finally becoming appreciated and loved and accepted. When, Fury realizes that he's like a father figure to Peter, and just everything that Peter has to go through. But finally, that public presentation that Agent Carter gives to the press about how Spider-Man is really the hero to thank. That is so touching, because that's 100% a directive that came from Fury to specifically, take that approach. And it makes me well up. It makes me sort of shiver with emotions as I'm reading it. I love this story arc. Honestly, I think this might be one of my favorites from the Ultimate Spider-Man line. And it's this particular story arc that just always gets to me, because I was raised by my grandparents. My real parents were rarely in my life growing up, so my grandmother and my grandfather effectively took those roles, and I think that that's like a big reason why characters like Peter Parker or Luke Skywalker have always struck a chord with me, because I could understand what they were going through and how their lives were. And this Ultimate series, just all of it, just really gets something deep down in my heart of hearts. Because I lost my grandfather my freshman year of high school, kind of like how Peter loses his uncle his freshman year of high school. Obviously, I didn't go out and become a superhero. I made YouTube videos. But after that, the only family I had was my grandmother. Kind of like how Peter only ever had his aunt. And it doesn't help that my grandma also kind of looks similar to Aunt May to begin with. So going back and rereading this story, it made me cry. It made me full-on, runny eyes, red, leaking, crying tears coming from my tear ducts. And I think that that's a testament to the story that's being told, and also to Brian Michael Bendis and his understanding of the human condition and of empathy and for caring for one another and the family of it all. And I truly love it. That's the beauty of Spider-Man. That's the beauty of Peter Parker and of Brian Michael Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man adaptation. And I really think that this is one of the standouts within this series. As always, let me know your thoughts on my thoughts in the comments, and check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey's videos for early access to videos, movie commentaries. All of my comics are posted on there alongside my notes and commentaries for each page and how they came to be. I also have an Etsy shop if you want to purchase the physical copies of my comic books on there. Every purchase comes with a free head sketch of any character of your choosing. And also check out my podcasts, the Comic Shtick Podcast, where comics are my shtick, and I Need Some Disney, where my Disney-obsessed wife and I sit down to discuss all things Disney. I will see you guys next time for more Ultimate Era presents the Spider-Ganza. Bye.